Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guests today are Felicite Wolfe from the African American Museum of Iowa. Welcome, Felicity.
Thank you.
And Julia Jessen from the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art, who we remarked before we rolled tape that you are now a Culture Crawl veteran because you have done this once.
Yes, thanks for having me back.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice to have you both back. New exhibit up at the Museum of Art, but it is a collaboration between your two organizations. A partnership, Felicity, partly out of necessity, because as most of us know who've driven past 12th Avenue Southwest, the African American Museum is kind of closed right now.
It is closed. We are undergoing a capital campaign and doing some major remodeling to the building. We closed about fall of last year, actually, and we should be opening, fingers crossed, by spring of next
Okay.
year. So
So things are probably sort of kind of taking shape. How's it
they
going?
are taking shape. They just got the windows put in, and it actually looks very nice. I got to say, it's going to be really, really amazing when it's opened. Yes, very different.
What was the biggest change that people were looking for out of the remodel? What was kind of the one, I there were several things that precipitated it, but once you got it on paper, what was this is one thing we got to have?
Well, the one thing we've got to have. Our building just needed it. There was just some kind of rundown parts and needed of updating. Like we needed to have a sprinkler system and our roof wasn't real great. So it was all actually those little things. But the big showstopper part of it is because we had to move our entrance because of the flood wall. It's
Mm.
now just going to be like a wall of windows when you walk in. And there's going to be a beautiful garden landscaped area next to it as well. So I think it's just really going to bring it into the modern day. It's going to
Oh,
look really
that's very
exceptional.
nice.
Yeah.
Although you're old when they are remodeling what you still think of as the new African American Museum.
Well, that's true.
And so obviously the exhibit curated by both organizations but housed at the Museum of Art. Tell me how the project came about, Julia.
Yeah. Well, it actually started before I even
Well,
began
because
at
you
the Cedar
haven't been
Rapids
here very
Museum.
long, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So
So,
asking you about the history is
yeah.
challenging a little bit.
Yeah. But my predecessor, Kate Kunau, worked with Felicity once this project got started. And I believe Felicity can talk about how the idea first came to be at your organization.
Right. We still, even though our building was closed, still need to maintain a presence in the area. And so we had already decided as a staff and through a community survey that contemporary Black artists was going to be the next exhibit. But the issue was, well, where are we going to put it? So I had mentioned to Kate, and she sounded very excited about it and talked to the CRMA director, Sean Ulmer, about it, and he was on board as well. So it really just snowballed from that. We could have a place, and I was really excited that it was the CRMA because they have the knowledge. They do this every day, and I'm not used to hanging artwork and everything that goes along with that. So my end of it was kind of putting the call for entries out, getting some jurors to help me make decisions and finalize who was going to be accepted into the show. And then when it came to the nuts and bolts of getting the artwork in, getting it hung, that was completely Julia and the CRMA team that helped with that. And I learned a lot. I can say I've kind of sort of hung my first art show.
I will note, just so Felicity doesn't sell herself short,
Oh.
she did the layout for the show. So I was there to facilitate and help with whatever she needed or give, suggestions or
Yes.
thoughts. But Felicity really kind of spaced everything out and decided where things would go in the gallery. And I think she did so really successfully. I think it turned out really nicely.
Thank you.
The exhibit is called Power and Impact, and and when we say contemporary Black artists, most all of them are living, yes?
Mhm.
They
All of
are
them.
all living,
They are all
and they
living. Okay.
are all of the 21st century.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
artworks had to be made from 2000 on. But there's a mix of generations as well. We have two young women who have just graduated high school and have entered college. And then we have Jean Barry, who I'm not going to even say she's an older artist who has done
Established.
established. That's a good word. Yes, established. And has worked for many years and is nationally and internationally known. And so and kind of everything in between. So it was really great that we were able to get multiple age ranges and multiple styles as well.
Well, notwithstanding, or in the we talk a lot about this on this show. In classical music, where modern music is sometimes a challenge, even in jazz. A lot of our
Hmm.
most well-known jazz artists are from another era. So, what was the process that the call for entries looked like, since you got
I
such a
made it.
wide range?
I did, and that was kind of the point. Like my inspiration was very simple. I just wanted to showcase that there are Black artists in Iowa. They are working right now, and they're working in a variety of mediums and talking a variety of different stories. That really was it, because I didn't know what I was going to get. I had no idea how many artists there were. I I had no idea how many different. I tried to get into all areas of the state to at least get the call out, because it would have been nice to have gotten that. And that was really, really the only parameters. And then I had 2 other jury members. I had Richard Merritt, who is an artist and a professor at Luther College in Decorah. And my second juror was John Page, who is the curator at the Waterloo Center for the Arts. I believe he's also now interim director. Because I wanted to make sure, because I don't have the lived experience, I wanted to make sure I had artists on the jury and artists of color as well, to help me make these decisions.
How many entries did you end up receiving?
I believe it was about 20 to 30, and we chose 11.
Okay.
And some artists have multiple pieces
Mhm.
in as well.
So, Julia, as from the display perspective, even though it sounds like you collaborated on
We did
on the
collaborate.
layout,
Mhm.
but Julia coming in, looking at these pieces, and
Yeah.
putting your curator hat on.
Yeah.
What did you see in terms of themes, things,
Yeah.
similarities, differences?
Sure.
I mean, if you were putting this together from scratch, how what would you have said about the collection as a whole?
Yeah. I think kind of like what Felicity said, it's one of the great things about the exhibition is the variety that's present there. There really isn't kind of one single through line through the exhibition. There are a lot of things going on. Some of the artists are inspired by historical references. You've got a portrait of Harriet Tubman. You've got a reference to Black Wall Street and to the Great Migration. You have other artists who are thinking about family and sisterhood, ideas of like home and place and belonging. You also have artists responding to loss and to tragedy and responding to what it's like to be Black in America right now, and show that through their art and kind of grapple with that. Um, and you have artists too who, very recently responding to the pandemic too, and kind of thinking about that in their work and having that be present in what they're doing too. So it's a huge variety of things, which I think is what's really exciting about the exhibition and really shows, what Black artists in Iowa are doing right now. And I think that's what's great about it.
And when it comes right down to it, we're not as good in arts and culture about talking about what's going on right now. We're a lot better at looking at things through in a historical lens after things have kind of settled for a
Hmm.
while. We're not
Hmm.
quite as good at contemporary today. So this is great. Well, Julia, I'm going to put you on the spot, since you came into this, a little bit later, and have a little bit of an outsider
Hmm.
perspective.
Hmm.
Is there any work or small group of works in this that spoke to you particularly?
Sure. It's hard to choose just one, of course. But I will say one of the pieces as you come into the gallery that I think is very striking, and was an interesting process just to get it put up. It's actually an installation piece by the artist Jill Wells, who's out of Des Moines. And she's one of the artists thinking about the Great Migration. And she actually represents it using these butterflies which she adheres to the walls, and they kind of climb up the walls in these different patterns, referencing the patterns that Black Americans took as they were migrating throughout the U.S. So she also incorporates a sewing machine, which actually belonged to, I believe, her grandmother. And she incorporates that as well, and it's called Black Thread, and it's about these kind of threads of history, and the threads that are kind of uniting and connecting across the country. And it's a very powerful, striking piece when you come in, and it was fascinating because we got to have Jill come out to install it for us. Since it is a very involved and detailed piece, we wanted the artist to actually be there and be present to do that work. And Jill was very gracious about agreeing to do that. And so it was wonderful to have her on site to actually have her vision come true with that piece. So that's just one, but there are so many in that exhibition.
So once the museum, the African American Museum opens up again, Felicity, now that you've had this experience, do you anticipate more art exhibits?
I would love to. I would absolutely, if we're having it at the African American Museum, bring Julia over to help me hang it, because it is definitely they're two different animals, a history museum and an art museum. So, there's different strengths that we both bring to these things, but what's really great is that we were able to collaborate, that I was able to come into Julia's space and she allowed me to just come in there and lay it out, and so that's really special when two institutions can come together and do something like this.
Well, we have a history of, Julie in particular, you're new. We have a history of collaborating, with floods and derecho. We've had a lot of our organizations have found ways to work together by choice and by necessity. So I'm glad that this is both cases. The exhibit's going to be up for several months into the spring, yes?
Yes, it ends, I believe, March 31st is the final date for the exhibition.
So it's called Power and Impact, a collaboration between the African American Museum of Iowa and the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art, up at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. I imagine that if you want to find out more about the exhibit, you can probably find information on both of your websites, yes?
Correct.
What is the African American website?
It's www.blackiowa.org.
And the museum?
And crma.org.
All right. Well, thanks very much for being with me today.
Thank you so much.
You can hear The Culture Crawl live on the radio many weekdays at 10:30, or download the podcast, watch or listen on your own schedule at kcck.org/culture, or using your favorite podcast app. Our video producer is Lydia Kilgore. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.